Welcome to the Attachment Point News Roundtable. I am Brett Fulmer, and with Nick Lamparelli, the captain of the ship, we co-host this together. And today, we don't have any guests. We're going to dive into sales, business development. We're going to talk about Nick's startup that's a little further down the road. We're going to talk about my little fledgling one that I'm getting out the gate, and should be good. You know, it's a journey. So,
yep.
Welcome, Nick.
Awesome. Happy Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you and I were chatting before we got started. I thought a good place for us to go, and we happened to align on this, so it was fantastic, was had a Twitter conversation with Rob Galbraith this morning, and he asked the question, why hasn't why hasn't insurance been Uberized, right? And I came up with a bunch of ideas, and I think and then I saw a tweet from you that basically said that getting your own business stood up, you were pleasantly pleased at how easy it was to get it stood up.
Yeah.
But a bit surprised at how difficult it was to do business development. I think that ties in very nicely with the tweet storm I had with Rob Galbraith this morning, which is, at the end of the day, insurance is really a shitty product. I mean, it's necessary.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, they'll call it a necessary evil.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's a tough product to sell, which really dovetails nicely with your experience, which is business development and sales and actually selling it, and why salespeople and agents and brokers are so important in insurance. So we haven't spoken in 2 to 3 weeks. So why don't you give us an update in terms of standing it up? What have you done? And why were you surprised at how simple it was, or easier than what you expected?
So when you're working at a brokerage, you think about the bond, you think about the entity itself having to have a license, you think about producers working there, insurance, the E&O. It feels complicated. Just going through my journey, and to be candid, to lay it all out there, I had a sales job that wasn't a great fit, lasted about 3 months. I was working with a buddy. That was 4 months ago. And, let go, not out of my own decision. And I immediately started looking for jobs. And there was the idea in the back of my mind, what if I do my own thing? And after about 2 months, there's a couple of job offers, but they're similar to episodes I had before. Been in sales for 10 years, got a good network. So I was like, let's do this. And my wife was really supportive. So that's 2 months ago. The E&O through CoverWallet, through Hiscox, super easy. Got a phone call, cheaper than expected. A bond, I typed in, California insurance bond, CA. Again, website pops right up. These guys do it all day, every day. Nick pointed me at Ollie Insurance. Phenomenal people, phenomenal tools. Love the dashboard. Really cool team. Carrier appointments, boom. So that all happened pretty quick. And when I was on the fence about doing my own thing or taking a job, I called a friend who's an entrepreneur. I said, hey, I'm in between these two roads. What do you think? He's like, forget that. Work as hard as those guys to make you work, but do it for yourself. He's like, come down to my office. I got a room, set you up with a phone. So all these things kind of just domino. You're like, wow, okay, I'm in business. I got a whiteboard. I got a phone. I got a computer. I got carrier appointments. Let's go. Then I have like the last bit of paperwork in the state of California. There's like an action notice. I got an appointment with Kaiser to get my health license activated, but I didn't have an appointment anywhere for the life. So I had to send an action notice and a bond. They received the bond the other day. For some reason, accounting's slower. So they had me send a check. That's like the hardest thing that's happened so far. And give them a phone call. They call you back the next day. They're really nice, really thorough.
Yeah.
Been
and
really
so
impressed.
If that's the hardest thing, right?
Yeah.
It's
that's
almost expected, right?
Yeah. And I had Broker Brett set up from when I worked in an insurance agency as like a forms website. So just tailored that over. And then I'm setting up a new website. It's at NPBIC, Newport Beach Insurance Center. And it's pretty much stood up. So when that bond comes through, I'll join a local chamber of commerce and I'll run a more official business. But it wasn't that bad. I got my laptop already. My goal is to keep everything in the suitcase. So I don't want the idea of a digital brokerage is I want my thumbprint to be as big as my suitcase. And so far, pulling that off.
Yep.
Historically, I'd worked at a moving company and I knock doors and nobody wants to deal with office moves. And you just have to be the person people think of. Similar to insurance, it's kind of like a reluctant purchase, but they have to do it. And then I worked at a brokerage for, a year and change, and we had leads, sold anywhere from 10 to 20,000 a month premium, which isn't a lot, but worked the leads and it was there. So I think I'm used to more deal flow, and where I'm struggling right now is I'll come up with these ideas for like 2 days, I'll call law offices about cyber. 2 days I'll call, medical offices about cyber. 2 days I'll go knock doors in the neighborhoods. Like, keep trying to see if I can find the right wedge, but I don't give anything a long enough tail to see if it's actually working. And, 2 months into it, probably month and a half of really being able to try to sell, and got a few friends and family kind of policies, 2 little lesser risk policies, but looking for that traction, looking for that click, which I know there won't be like a magic bullet, but that's where we're at today.
Yeah. Well, first I would say, and I don't want to be that guy that's like giving advice, because I need
advice today.
I'm going through the same thing as well. So I'll give you my story at some point in this conversation. But first, I mean, your story is no different than any startup in any business, right? I think there's this magical thought, well, if I build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter what business you're in. That is not possible. The podcast, How I Built This, Guy Raz, fantastic. It's probably one of my favorite podcasts. Just so easy to listen to. Go listen to the Airbnb podcast on that. Anyone that's watching this, go listen to. I'll see if I can get the link for the show notes on that. Airbnb, right? I am going to rent my room to a stranger. If you listen to that podcast, there is not a single investor that thought that was a good idea.
That's
no
funny.
one.
Yeah.
Absolutely no one. That took, I wouldn't say blood, but I would say sweat and tears on their part to get traction on that idea. I mean, just think about it. That's a shitty idea. I have a spare bedroom. I'm going to rent it to a stranger. It's scary on both ends.
Couch surfer was like the fringiest concept of all time. Like your kind of hippie dippy buddies might have participated back in the day.
You have no idea who's going to come in, whether they're rapists or murderers
or therapists,
or they're going to or they're going to destroy your property, or if you're the renter, who is it? Charles Manson? I'm renting a room from. Like, Jesus,
weird cameras.
So your story rings true. Like, it's just hard when you get started, and it is all about deal flow, and it's all about prospecting, which is why I think probably one of the few pieces of advice that I gave you was you need to have a 2-year time span here. Like, you need to be able to financially support yourself for 2 years, because it's going to take you months before you get even a modest amount of traction. Then it's going to take you a year plus before you realize, okay, I kind of know what I'm doing, but I'm still not quite making the amount of money that I'm going to need. So you need 2 years of finances just so you can try to pull it off. And I have no doubt that you will pull it off. No doubt at all. I appreciate
that. Yeah.
It's just, you got to forget the blood. Maybe it's too eager, but sweat and tears.
Yeah.
Hopefully there are no tears, but the sweat part, you have to physically knock on doors, but also I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Hypothetically knock on doors. You have to create a prospect stream. Insurance gets sold on 1-year cycles. You have to align yourself to your customers. So what you say is just like, yep, sounds about right. Even us on our end, we're over a year old, and we're just now getting traction. It took that long. It's part of the nature of the game.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. It's the stress that's kind of different, and then the open sandbox, I'll call it. So, and the other cool thing I've realized in like the past week is if there's a problem, fix it. Like, it's your thing, so you get to work on it directly. But the stress is different in that usually there's a deadline, usually there's a project, usually there's a quota, and there's a hurdle, and you're on this. But it's a little bit more broad when you're doing your own thing. Same thing with the workload. Usually in a job, it's like I have this checklist, I have this thing that I'm reporting to, I'm responsible for this category. let me play in the sandbox. But it's really interesting when you're on your own. It's like, how am I going to be the most productive today? What am I working towards? So I think I still just need to kind of find that path, like you're saying, the knocking on doors, set up the regiment, not be so kind of spastic in attempts to like hack the system, and just sort of start plotting, because it is, like
Yeah.
you're saying, it's a marathon,
Yeah. I don't think there is a hack.
I don't think so either.
If there is, it's whoever did the hack got lucky.
Yeah.
I don't know if you listened to my podcast last week with Michael Porpora.
Oh yeah, that was great. The
Yeah.
niches
So
about the franchising,
yeah,
intellectual property. He's an
yeah,
awesome dude.
yeah. So I was thinking of you
Yeah,
when
I
we were
appreciate that.
talking. You know, you can come into insurance and just say, well, auto, homeowners, everybody needs that.
Hmm.
But to me, that's a tough sell, because
Hmm.
everybody has it already. So they already have, like, their nephew, their brother-in-law, the agent. It's hard to wedge yourself into
Hmm.
that particular relationship unless it's just like, I can try to find you a cheaper price. And to me, that's not how you want to sell insurance.
No.
That's a bad way to go. I prefer finding a niche, finding a product that people are struggling with, and that
Hmm.
a traditional agent, traditional broker just can't place. So even the agent or the broker is probably going to a specialist or a
Hmm.
wholesaler. Solve that problem and then work backwards. Then now you're in. You have some degree of trust with your customer. Now try to say, hey, would you mind if I worked on your workers' comp? Would you, what else are you struggling with?
Hmm.
Oh, flood. I think I can help you with that.
Yeah.
I know it. I know a guy.
Yeah. Another flood
Um,
mafia.
so it's to me, I'm always thinking different. How are you
Mhm.
different? When I talk to folks, when I go to conferences or I talk to folks, um, and they ask me about what I do, and they'll say, "Oh, I know someone that does that." I'm always trying to say, "Well, is it the same?
Yeah.
I bet it's different. I bet we do different things." Just
I like the way you design your policies to be different. I know we kind of talked with Chris from Risk Genius before about how we talked about standardizing, and you like the open policy because it's where you compete. Cyber has been super interesting. I've been checking out those companies and talking with a couple of them. So you have your traditional standard policies in cyber, and they'll have broad coverage. A lot of times they'll help out if there's an issue in real time, and then they'll help you sort of remediate the issue, deal with first
Mhm.
party losses, third party losses. Is pretty cool. Then you got some companies that bundle in like pinging your network to see where vulnerabilities are. There's another company that does a fake phishing test for your company to see if people open up emails they shouldn't. Um, but it seems like cyber is a little bit of an afterthought that people usually just plug in, rather than, that's the one I want to kind of open the door with. So if I had to say there's a special tool we're looking at, I think that's a pretty interesting market right now.
It seems really interesting, and
Yeah.
frankly, I don't know much about it at all. Um, I always say cyber is like fire insurance, except there are arsonists all around your house. You
Yeah.
know?
Uh,
It's like
ben,
you have your peril
uh-huh.
is constantly evolving,
Yeah.
even
Well,
during
Ben,
the policy term.
you're what is it, Ben Biamanji? He had mentioned that you're a lot more likely to get hacked than like your inventory stolen. It's just gonna be fairly common. And like you're
Yeah.
saying, it's always evolving. Your encryption is always at a chase with the guys trying to break it. You know, so
Yeah. So I I'm sorry, I keep referring to podcasts that
oh, yeah,
I've
yeah,
already done, but the one I just did
yeah.
this past week with Sasha DeWitt
Okay,
and Carrie Ann Nadeau,
yeah.
and we talked about thought leadership. And
Hmm.
it's like, for someone like you, I think that's important. I think
Hmm.
it's extremely important to, as part of your lead generation,
Yeah.
is to educate your customers. And you can educate your customers after you knock on the door,
Hmm.
right? So you knock on the door, they let you in, you're sitting down at their mahogany table and you're educating them. I actually don't recommend that.
Hmm.
I don't think that's the right time. I think time is valuable, and you
Hmm.
you have a businessman or a businesswoman at a table. Their time is very valuable. You
Hmm.
shouldn't be there. That shouldn't be the moment of education. That should be the moment of getting the deal done.
Right.
I think of education as lead generation. I think
Hmm.
take cyber for instance. I know shit about cyber. Honestly,
I
and
got my
I,
homework
I
assignment.
I consider myself an insurance expert, and I don't
Yeah.
know anything about the coverage forms, the capacity that's out there, pricing, exclusions. I have no idea how that market works at all. And if I'm an insurance expert and I don't know that, then business owners don't.
Yeah, and absolutely. And we were talking about that on LinkedIn a little bit. I do kind of owe, I think, an article to the subject. And I think for myself right now, I got to play the old game and the new game. I got to knock the doors. I got to go to the chambers. I got to do what's classically
Sure.
works. And I got to be progressive. That's kind of why I built Newport Beach Insurance Center to look like my dad's insurance kind of place. And then I want to keep Broker Brett. I actually want to lean harder into the progressive stuff, into cyber, into niche products, into auto binding tools. So I'm going to make that kind of the extreme next generation, and then I'll make the other one kind of old school.
If you can see, I'm redecorating my room, so I have books galore everywhere. But I'm looking for my sales books. I think they're on the floor behind me, which means my headset's going to get ripped off. So I'm not going to get it. But Tony Iarino, he's got a series of 3 books. The only sales guide you'll ever need. I can't remember the second one, and he just released the 3rd one, Eat Your Lunch. And if you listen to that, you said old school, new school. According to Tony, it's all sales. There is no old school and new school. As a matter of fact, he would say if you're calling what you're doing old school, he's saying that's what's missing in the modern day tech startup, modern day sales is missing the old school. He's absolutely believe. Listen, you're alone if you're cold calling. No one else is doing it.
True.
So cold call. Like,
and people aren't that aggressive anymore either. Like they're not that mad when you walk in. Even doors that have like 4 signs on them, they kind of don't care. Like you're 100% correct. Everyone thinks they can just email blast and social media market their way to success. You know,
you can't. That has become the crowded highway.
Yeah.
Now the old way is basically a commuter rail into the city. With no stops, express, and you can have any seat on the train. That's pretty awesome. But of course, now you have old school issues, which are cold calling, scary. You know, people don't like to do it. Knocking on doors, scary. You have to be willing to say no. So the 4th book, the three from Tony Iannarino, the other one would be Jeb Blount, book called Objections. And what I love about that book, and I keep meaning to do a book review on these, but what I love about that book in particular is that he right at the beginning, no bones about it, basically says, if you don't have the guts, the will, the grit to overcome objections, you don't belong in sales. And not only that, you're going to struggle to do things in life because you're going to get way more objections than you are going to get nods, right? So you need to be able to have a strategy to overcome those objections. And insurance, getting back to where we started with insurance, the objections are since the beginning of time. I'm all set. Flood doesn't happen to me. I'll let you quote it, but you have to, you have to beat the price. And then they end up giving the agent the other, the cheaper price. Insurance is a hard sell because as you mentioned with cyber, it's an afterthought. Most insurance is an afterthought. They either have to buy it because of some regulation, or they just had a claim and now they're just like, oh shit, I need insurance. You know, we had someone that we quoted for flood last, let's see, probably late spring, early summer. I don't remember exactly. So we quoted them, didn't hear anything. Like 2 months came by, the broker came back and said, hey, is that quote still good? We confirmed, we gave them another 30 days. So that got us to the end of August. Still hadn't heard anything. Hurricane Florence shows up. We would like to bind that quote. Nope.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You know, you're dealing with that kind of customer. You know, people don't want to buy this coverage. They look for every reason to shave the price off. They don't know what's being covered. It's a mountain to climb for an insurance sales professional. But if you can climb that mountain, you have a magnificent view of the universe.
I think it's going to be cool. And I still love the intent, and kind of circling back to the start of the conversation, why hasn't insurance been Uberized? I think that's one of the aspects that
completely.
For it to be advantageous, it's got to be ahead of time. And then 50 different states, 50 different
Yeah.
regulations.
And it's
Slice.
capital
Yeah.
intensive, right? If you write 10 $1 million policies with one insurance company, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's that insurance company now has a $10 million liability.
Mm-hmm.
How much capital, if you were the customer, how much capital would you want them to have in reserve to cover that exposure? You'd want them to have $10 million,
Yeah.
wouldn't you?
So say 2 million plus some reinsurance, at least.
So
Yeah.
at most, they're getting paid $100,000. So
Yeah.
you're
Wow.
put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah.
They're on the hook for $10 million. They got paid $100,000. It's actually a mediocre business
Yeah.
in the general sense. That's what Warren Buffett says. Insurance is a mediocre business.
But he likes
That's
the float.
partially why you
Yeah.
mentioned the regulations.
Yeah.
Getting up and started is a nightmare,
Mm-hmm.
and it's capital intensive, and it's a product nobody wants to buy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
So
always joke that, like, luckily I feel generally likable. I don't know what it is. I like people, and I think it just comes off. So then I could get into insurance because I feel generally well liked. So I'm like, okay, what can I do with my good name? Let's get into insurance.
completely sully it.
Yeah.
You know, I remember. So I started in the '90s,
Okay.
a long time ago. Um, Things had not transitioned over to the internet. So the internet was brand new.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Insurance companies pretty much worked via mail and fax,
Mm-hmm.
right? And at that time, I know you're reading The Wedge. Randy Schwantz
That's good.
he was big. His books were big then, though. Being a good salesperson. Back in like the 50s,
Mm-hmm.
in the 60s, the 40s, the 30s, um, insurance sales professionals, they were the elite in
Mm-hmm.
sales because they were literally going door to door.
Mm-hmm.
Like you had to, and it was a fairly new product back then. So if it's the 20s or the 30s, there was no such thing as homeowners insurance. You were packaging fire and other stuff. You had to be really good at sales,
Mm-hmm.
not just closing, but everything before that, which is prospecting, lead generation,
Well, even the trust.
working through that cycle to get to a sale.
Well, think about it now. You can Google, you can look at the history of the company, everything else. But imagine back in the day, somebody shows up with a packet of paper from your regional carrier. Like, how do you know that's worth anything? The guy's writing you a personal check and handing you cash. I
How
think
do you
even just
know?
the confidence,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that stood out in the Wedge too. The expertise, the niche, the showing where things can be done better. Finding the pain point. Yeah, I think ignorantly hopping into it, a good network. I like Brett. He's an insurance analyst in the business his way. I think you truly have to earn it, and I may be stating the obvious, and there's probably a bunch of brokers out there like, of course, but you really have to earn the business in insurance because,
But
yeah.
you're stating the obvious, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of obvious to everyone, but not to the insurtech companies that are coming in
Mm.
thinking, well, I'm going to eliminate the brokers.
I may have looked at it like an insurtech because I was around that fintech before, and then I
Yeah.
hopped in insurance. It was like, this thing's slow. This thing's old. There's opportunity galore here. And then now that I'm in there trying to play the game on the playing field of the last generation, I'm like, wow, this is a challenging task.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I think you can still do both and make it work. Like I said, I have faith in my network, my friends. I got support. My beautiful wife's been awesome. She's stressing far less than I am. And I'll figure it out. But it is a hard game when you try to get into the old game.
Yeah.
It's not something you can just put online and make look sexy.
Yeah. And for those insurtechs that are potentially listening to this,
Yeah.
You want to like disrupt a broker. That's going to be really hard to do because you can plaster your website up, but to get in front of that grit that you talked about, the sweat, knocking on doors, getting in front of people. The insurance product itself does not easily lend itself to getting yourself in front of it. As a matter of fact, you're competing with State Farm and Allstate and Geico trying to get in front of them. Go ahead and buy some AdWords.
Yeah.
It's probably cheaper to hire a really good agent or an agency or brokers. It's probably cheaper to distribute your product that way than to buy AdWords or Facebook ads. YouTube ads. That's
Mhm.
really expensive to try to
Yeah.
try to fill your funnel.
I mean, I'm probably gonna be wrong here, but my concept is get myself somewhat self-sustaining, and then bring on another broker kind of service or person who'd be in a similar kind of tier, and then bring on the support behind. But I'm with you. I think a self-reliant body that you can work with, somebody who's in a peripheral sales field. Plus, I think the grass is just going to get greener. I don't look at it like a doomsday kind of thing. I look at it like older guys are, phasing out.
Yeah,
There's
completely,
gonna need to be a young body there to kind of be the regional guy, to be the network guy. So
completely.
I'm excited, especially at that small business level, that 10 to 100 employee kind of true small business, not even trying to beat up the middle market. I think it's gonna be opportunity galore. Something
Mhm.
above your local state farm and something below your Brown and Brown. I think I'm excited about that gap.
Well, the big companies don't want to play
Mhm.
in that space. That's why, you've seen some attempt for InsurTech to come in
Mhm.
and like, hey, we're, small business, come in here.
Yeah.
Same problem, it, it- the customer doesn't know what they want.
Hmm.
Customer doesn't know what they need. There's a sales opportunity. There's an educational opportunity there. And so, I commend you, honestly, like
No.
it's, you, you got a big road to
Yeah.
go against, but you're going to do it.
It feels like Lord of the Rings, though. I'm probably Samwise. I'll give myself Samwise. But you got this tribe, between yourself, between Pat, between, Emerson, Ashley Fitzsimmons, everybody. There's a team that you're kind of working with. And I just happen to be in a very fertile playing field, and pretty good with technology. So, I mean, I feel good about it, but you're right. Like the odds don't feel long, but it definitely feels like a big road to plow, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
completely.
yeah, it's
Completely.
fun though. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great conversation.
Heck
Yeah.
yeah, man. I was looking forward to this.
Will insurance get Uberized? No, it won't. And it's because of what we just described. Too much regulation,
Hmm.
too capital intensive. I mentioned in the tweet, it's basically like the airline industry. You want to
Hmm.
start an airline? Okay. What does a jet go for?
Yeah.
A jumbo jet, $500 million. Like, okay.
I think the upside will be the agents that use Uber. If insurance gets
Yeah.
Uberized, it'll be the broker customer interaction will be more fluid.
Yeah.
But in terms of the carrier side, it'll be a while.
So technology to streamline the process, right?
Uh-huh.
At,
Yep.
at every stage. I,
Hmm.
I buy that 100%. I think even more is the product itself,
Hmm.
like a paper policy product. I have a policy around here somewhere in my mess, but the paper product policy, um, that's part of the problem, right?
Hmm.
That's not a tech thing. That is an ingenuity thing. That's a creativity thing.
Hmm.
So can you embed? You talked about cyber. Can you embed insurance into another product where the insurance comes with risk management or the risk management comes with insurance?
Hmm.
That's my vision. That's where I think we should
Yeah.
go. Then it's not an insurance transaction. It's a risk management transaction. It's a financial transaction.
A friend at Epic was saying that.
But you get some kind of contract certainty in
Hmm.
that transaction by having the insurance policy attached to it.
Well, he got his A risk management ARM or something. He
Mm-hmm.
just finished his ARM.
Who's that?
Friend over at Epic, Brian Chu. He's a local broker over at
Okay.
Epic. Really nice guy. We actually connected because he's a big fan of insurance nerds, and I did a Millennial Monday with him about a week and a half ago. But
You,
he was
you
saying
should
he's.
you should interview him on the
Oh
attachment.
yeah, I'll
Yeah.
get him on here.
Yeah.
Absolutely, he's a great dude. No, he definitely cares about the next phase and getting him ready. But his thing was we'll become more risk managers in the future. He thinks the
Yeah.
insurance process itself will be streamlined. So how do we even mitigate risk more, add more value? That's his 2 cents on the future of it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I was a biology major in
Mhm.
college, and I remember reading a quote, and I think it was like in the early 1900s, and that's when chemistry really started to come into
Mhm.
biology. So there was a lot of work in genetics and biochemistry and stuff like that. And the quote was something. It was from a biologist. He's like, with all of this new stuff that's coming in, does this mean that we're going to have to become biochemists and molecular biologists. I don't think molecular biology had started then, but geneticists, zoologists, ecologists. It's like, let us hope so. And I feel the same way about insurance. Like in this day and age, to be considered an insurance professional, does that mean we have to be experts or at least competent in technology, in sales, in risk management, in the specifics of the customers that we're serving, in data and analytical science? Let us hope so.
That's cool.
Seriously, like I hope we go there. I hope that the future insurance professionals, like part scientist, part actuary, part risk manager, part technologist, part salesperson, part underwriter,
I want to get on the
part
data.
financier, whatever.
We talked about it 2 weeks ago with Abel, but the data, I feel like that's the whole of my game right now. How to do a market analysis, how to see where you need to drive into. But yeah, data, if I was looking for a hole in my game, right now. But it's fun. It's an interesting world, It's kind of funny, this podcast, I know we're kind of wrapping, reminds me of the original intent where it's basically a phone call. This is like what we would have done. But now it might be a couple of people hanging on.
Yeah, and we get to share it. So
yeah, exactly.
Like you and I are talking to one another, but I know as I'm talking, like a million other people are going to see this. Actually,
yeah, absolutely.
Probably 100. But
over time, who knows what happens 50 years from now after Rethought becomes this behemoth? Part of the catalog will be like, go watch Nick Lamparelli's old podcast.
That's funny.
This is a case study.
So I'm documenting.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not creating. I'm documenting. You and I are both documenting.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Okay. Great conversation.
Good stuff, man. Absolutely. Look forward to the next one.
Awesome. Okay. Until next time.
Until next time. See you.